Imagine spending a lifetime building something, brick by painful brick, only to watch it crumble because of someone else's reckless whims. My name is David, and I thought I understood betrayal. I was wrong. What happened to me, what my own family did, defies belief. It started subtly, a slow drip of small disappointments, but it ended with a financial earthquake that left me staring at the wreckage of my entire future. For years, I'd been the dependable one, the family's financial safety net. My parents, bless their hearts, were always a little disorganized with money. So, from the moment I started earning, I set up a joint credit card, a kind of emergency fund for them. It was my way of helping, a gesture of love. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, saving every penny, building a life, and a significant safety net. That card, my card, was meant for genuine emergencies, for a sudden medical bill, or a car repair that couldn't wait. It was for them, but the money was undeniably mine. I trusted them implicitly. That trust, I would soon discover, was a fragile thing, easily shattered by greed and entitlement. The first hint of trouble wasn't a bang, but a whisper. A few odd charges here and there, a fancy dinner, a designer handbag, things that didn't quite fit the narrative of emergency. When I asked, my mother would wave it away. "Oh, just a little treat, darling. You work so hard, you deserve to treat us." I brushed it off, chalking it up to their occasional extravagance. After all, they were my parents. Who could ever imagine their own flesh and blood would systematically drain their life savings? Then came the phone call. My sister, Sarah, had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She was charming, beautiful, and utterly ruthless when it came to getting what she wanted. "David," she chirped, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mom and Dad just booked my dream vacation. Paris, Rome, all of Europe." Isn't it wonderful? My blood ran cold. My dream vacation? Sarah had been whining about a European tour for months, a trip that cost more than my annual salary, a trip I'd gently suggested she save for, like any responsible adult. But no, Sarah never saved. Sarah always expected someone else to pay. I checked my account. The numbers on the screen punched the air out of my lungs. $75,000. Gone. Just like that. My savings, years of sacrifice, wiped out for Sarah's European adventure. Not an emergency, not a necessity, but a lavish, self-indulgent spree. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transactions, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, luxury shopping sprees already charged. They hadn't even left yet, and a significant chunk of my future was already gone. The resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface exploded into a raging inferno. How could they? How could my parents, who supposedly loved me, take every dime I'd worked for and hand it over to my sister without a second thought? The betrayal was a physical ache, a knot in my stomach that tightened with every breath. I called my mother, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Mom, what is this? $75,000? For Sarah's trip?" Her response was chillingly casual. "Oh, David, don't be dramatic, it's just money. Sarah needed a break, she's been so stressed." "You have plenty more, dear. You're so good with money. Just money?" My money. The money I'd earmarked for a down payment on a house, for my future, for my dreams. It was clear then. They saw me not as a son, but as an ATM, a never-ending source of funds for their favored child. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. My family had used me, exploited my generosity, and then dismissed my pain as drama. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. They were flying out tomorrow morning, a non-stop flight across the Atlantic. Sarah would be sipping champagne in first class, oblivious, while my life savings evaporated into the Parisian air. But I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not this time. They had used my money to buy Sarah's dream. Now, I would use my power to turn that dream into a nightmare. I knew exactly what I had to do. As their plane climbed into the morning sky, I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the screen. What happened next would change everything, not just for me, but for my entire family. My name is Alex. I always believed in the power of family, the unbreakable bonds that tie us together. Growing up, our house wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed and dreams were nurtured. My parents, Sarah and Robert, worked tirelessly, instilling in my younger sister Chloe and me the values of hard work and sacrifice. They often spoke of legacy, of building something substantial for the future. For me, that future always revolved around my education, specifically my pursuit of a medical degree. I envisioned myself a surgeon, saving lives, making a tangible difference. Every late night spent studying, every skipped social event, was a brick in that foundatio. My parents championed this dream, or so I thought. The trust fund, a substantial sum accumulated from my grandparents' inheritance and my parents' careful investments, was supposed to be my launchpad. It wasn't just money, it represented years of collective effort, a promise of a debt-free path through medical school and beyond. From early childhood, it had been drilled into me. This fund was for my education, my future. Chloe, 6 years my junior, had different aspirations. She was the free spirit, the artist, dreaming of backpacking through Europe, sketching cathedrals and painting landscapes. Her dreams, while valid, were always seen as more whimsical, less financially demanding. My parents often said, "Chloe's path is about experience, Alex's is about investment." I never questioned it. Why would I? The first tremor of doubt struck during a seemingly innocuous family dinner. Chloe, bubbling with excitement, started talking about her grand European adventure. She'd meticulously planned a 6-month itinerary, detailing flights, hostels, and even a few high-end art workshops in Florence and Paris. My parents beamed, exchanging proud glances. A knot began to form in my stomach. This wasn't the modest backpacking trip I'd imagined for her. The cost, even for a rough estimate, sounded astronomical. I remember asking, "That sounds incredible, Chloe, but how are you funding all of this?" My mother, quick as a flash, interjected, "Don't you worry about the details, sweetie. It's all taken care of." Her tone was a little too casual, a little too dismissive. A few weeks later, the official acceptance letter from my dream medical school arrived, a prestigious institution with a tuition fee that could make even a millionaire wince. I rushed to my parents, the letter clutched in my trembling hand, tears of joy welling in my eyes. "It's real! I got in!" I exclaimed, my voice hoarse with emotion. My father hugged me tightly, but his usual boisterous enthusiasm seemed muted. My mother offered a strained smile. "That's wonderful, Alex," she said, her eyes darting nervously between my father and me. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The next day, I logged into the online portal for my trust fund, eager to confirm the balance, to see the tangible proof of my future. My heart pounded as the page loaded. When the numbers appeared, a cold wave of shock washed over me, stealing my breath. The balance was a fraction of what it should have been. Not just a small withdrawal, but a catastrophic depletion. My vision blurred. I refreshed the page, thinking it was a glitch, a terrible mistake. The numbers remained unchanged. My mind raced, trying to grasp the impossible. Where was the money? Who could have taken it? The only people with access were my parents. A sickening realization began to dawn on me, a puzzle piece clicking into place with a horrifying thud. Chloe's grand European adventure, the exorbitant cost, my parents' secretive smiles, their sudden evasiveness, it couldn't be. They wouldn't. Not with my future, my life savings. The thought was a venomous whisper in my mind, growing louder, more insistent. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated dread. The sanctuary of my home, the unwavering trust I had in my parents, began to crumble around me. This wasn't just about money. It was about a profound betrayal, a shattering of the very foundation of my understanding of family. The resentment, cold and sharp, began to fester. The resentment, cold and sharp, began to fester. I tried to push it down, to rationalize, to tell myself I was overreacting. My parents had always been fair, always put my future first, hadn't they? Yet, the images of Chloe's extravagant plans, the casual way my parents dismissed the cost, gnawed at me. I started paying closer attention, noticing things I'd previously overlooked, small shifts in their behavior, hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. One evening, I overheard my mother on the phone. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but I caught fragments. The European trip, Chloe's happiness. Alex doesn't need to know the specifics. A cold dread seeped into my bones. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of suspicion. I felt a sudden desperate need for answers. My medical school applications were due in a few months, and the trust fund, my financial bedrock, was suddenly shrouded in a terrifying uncertainty. I decided to confront them, not with accusations but with questions. I approached them cautiously, trying to keep my voice even. "Mom, Dad," I began. "I was just thinking about my medical school expenses. We talked about the trust fund covering everything, right? Just wanted to confirm the details, for planning." My father cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze, while my mother fussed with her teacup. "Of course, Alex," my mother said, her voice a little too bright. "Everything's in order. No need to worry your head about it." My father chimed in. "The fund is secure. Always has been, always will be. It's for your future, exactly as we planned." Their assurances felt hollow, like a flimsy screen attempting to hide a gaping hole. The unease intensified. Their evasiveness spoke volumes, confirming my darkest fears. The next few weeks were a blur of growing paranoia and quiet investigation. I subtly checked bank statements they left lying around, scanned credit card bills, anything that might offer a clue. My heart sank with each discovery, each transaction that seemed out of place. Large sums were being transferred, not to investment accounts, but to an unknown travel agency and luxury retail outlets. It was a slow, agonizing process, like watching a perfectly constructed building crumble brick by brick. The evidence mounted, painting a picture of deliberate deception. They weren't just funding Chloe's trip. They were bankrolling a lavish, no-expense-spared odyssey, siphoning money from what I believed was my untouchable future. The final crushing blow came when I found a specific credit card statement. It wasn't one of their usual cards. This one was linked to the trust fund directly, a card I didn't even know existed, a card that was supposed to be for my emergencies, my specific educational needs. And on that statement, clear as day, were charges totaling over $75,000, all for Chloe's grand European adventure. Flights, five-star hotels, designer shopping sprees, exclusive workshops. It was all there, meticulously itemized, a brutal inventory of my stolen future. My vision blurred with a hot, stinging rage. $75,000. My medical school tuition, my living expenses, my entire planned life, reduced to a series of frivolous purchases for Chloe's fleeting whims. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was existential. My parents, the people who had preached sacrifice and foresight, had sacrificed my future for Chloe's immediate gratification. They hadn't just broken a promise, they had shattered the very essence of who I thought they were, and by extension, who I was. The trust, once so absolute, evaporated into a bitter vapor. I confronted them again, this time with the evidence in my trembling hand. I laid the statement on the kitchen table, my voice shaking with a fury I barely recognized. "What is this?" I demanded, pointing to the exorbitant charges. My mother gasped, her face draining of color. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes darting between me and the damning document. There was no bright assurance this time, no flimsy excuses. Just a stunned, guilty silence. "Chloe's trip," my mother finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "We wanted her to have this experience, Alex. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." My father added, "We figured you wouldn't need all of it right away. You'll make your own money, you're so capable." Their words were like acid, burning through any lingering affection. They weren't sorry for what they did. they were sorry they got caught. They truly believed I wouldn't need all of it, as if my future was some bottomless well they could dip into at will. A cold, hard resolve began to form within me. The pain of betrayal was immense, but beneath it, a powerful, unyielding anger took root. They had stolen from me, not just money, but my sense of security, my faith in their word, my very vision of the future. The emotional wound was deep, but it fueled a new, dangerous clarity. If they could disregard my future so easily, so callously, then I would show them the true cost of their actions. They had chosen Chloe's fleeting dream over my lifelong ambition. Now, they would face the consequences of that choice. The game had changed, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken resentments. Every family dinner felt like a performance, a brittle facade of normalcy concealing the gaping chasm that had opened between us. I watched my parents, their eyes alight with an enthusiasm I now found grotesque, as they discussed Chloe's travel plans. They spoke of cultural immersion and broadening horizons, while my own horizon, once so clear, had dissolved into a hazy, uncertain future. The trust fund, my future, was being siphoned away, not for an emergency, not for a vital investment, but for a 6-month European vacation for my younger sister, Chloe. The injustice burned a cold, steady fire in my gut. I began to research. Not medical journals or anatomy textbooks, but the intricate web of financial laws, the fine print of trust documents, the subtle nuances of parental control over inherited funds. Every night, after everyone else was asleep, I hunched over my laptop, the screen illuminating my grim determination. I learned about irrevocable trusts, about beneficiary rights, about the often blurred lines when parents acted as trustees. The more I dug, the more I realized the cold, hard truth. Legally, they were within their rights. The trust, while intended for my education, granted them significant discretionary power until I turned 25. I was 22. They weren't stealing, they were simply reallocating, under the guise of parental prerogative. This discovery didn't douse the fire. It stoked it into a raging inferno. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was a calculated, deliberate act. The final straw wasn't a grand confrontation, but a quiet, insidious erosion of my spirit. One evening I overheard my mother on the phone, her voice hushed, discussing flight upgrades for Chloe, a private tour of the Louvre, and a cooking class in Tuscany. "It's an investment in her happiness," she'd whispered, as if speaking of a sacred right. My happiness, my very future, was being dismantled piece by piece, and they called it an investment in someone else's fleeting pleasure. That night, I didn't just feel anger. I felt an icy resolve settle deep within me. They wanted to play a game of financial chess? Fine, I would play too. And I would play to win. My focus shifted entirely. Medical school applications, once my paramount concern, became secondary. My days were spent in a detached haze, going through the motions of my current studies, while my nights were consumed by a singular, obsessive purpose, unraveling the intricate details of their financial lives. I started with the obvious credit card statements. My parents, like many, were creatures of habit, using the same few cards for most of their larger purchases. It wasn't long before I found it, the specific card they were using for Chloe's trip. It wasn't a family card or a joint account. It was my card, an auxiliary card linked to my personal savings account, which my parents had set up years ago for emergencies and building credit. They had assured me it was just for small, incidental expenses, never anything substantial. They had lied. The transactions were undeniable: luxury airline tickets, 5-star hotel bookings, reservations for exclusive excursions, all under my name, all draining my money. The amount wasn't just a few $100s, it was escalating rapidly, already well over $50,000. They weren't just using the trust fund. They were actively spending my savings, the money I had earned from years of part-time jobs and scholarships, the money I had meticulously squirreled away for living expenses during medical school. The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't just taking my future, they were pilfering my present. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about Chloe's trip anymore. This was about their blatant disregard for my autonomy, my hard work, my very existence as a financial individual. They saw me not as an adult with my own dreams and resources, but as an extension of their will, a convenient piggy bank for their favored child. The resentment solidified into a cold, hard determination. I wouldn't confront them. I wouldn't beg or plead. They had made their choice, and now I would make mine. My plan began to form, precise and clinical, like a surgical procedure. I would let them commit to Chloe's extravagant journey, let them revel in their generosity, let them believe they had successfully pulled off their deception. Only then, when they were at their most vulnerable, when Chloe was thousands of miles away, would I make my move. The thought of their faces, the dawning horror as their carefully constructed world unraveled, sent a chill down my spine that was both terrifying and exhilarating. The game had indeed changed, and I, Chloe, was now playing to win. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in calculated patience. I watched them, my parents, with a detached clinical eye, observing their every move, every confident smile. They were completely oblivious, lost in their self-congratulatory bubble, convinced they had pulled off the perfect deception. Chloe, my sister, was already sending excited texts from Paris, pictures of the Eiffel Tower, snippets of conversations about art classes. Each message was a fresh twist of the knife, a reminder of what they had stolen, but also a fuel for the fire I was meticulously stoking. My plan required precision, timing, and a cold, unwavering resolve. I needed them to be at their most vulnerable, completely committed to their grand illusion, before I unleashed the truth. My parents, meanwhile, were practically giddy. They talked about Chloe's cultural immersion at every family dinner, every casual phone call with relatives. They boasted about her newfound appreciation for European history, completely ignoring the fact that she was funding it with what should have been my future. They even showed me receipts, not out of malice, but out of a sickening sense of transparency, as if to say, see, we're not hiding anything. Each transaction, each exorbitant charge for a 5-star hotel or a designer boutique, was a fresh wound, but I merely nodded, feigning interest, letting the resentment simmer beneath the surface. I was collecting evidence, building my case, piece by agonizing piece. The day finally arrived when Chloe was scheduled to fly from Rome to Athens, the last leg of her extravagant European tour before heading home. This was my window. I knew the flight details, the exact time she would be airborne, suspended between 2 continents, utterly reliant on the financial lifeline my parents had extended. I imagined her up there, sipping champagne, oblivious to the storm gathering below. It was a cruel irony, really. They had used my money to lift her to the clouds, and I was about to pull the rug out from under her, and them, with a single, decisive action. I sat at my laptop, the screen illuminating my face in the dim light of my room. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation, and a strange, unsettling excitement. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to execute the command that would unravel their carefully woven tapestry of lies. I pulled up the online banking portal, the same portal my parents had so carelessly given me access to, assuming I would never question their wise financial decisions. The trust fund balance stared back at me, a number that had once represented security, now a symbol of their betrayal. I took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of impending chaos. I scrolled down, past the legitimate transactions, past the tuition payments I had meticulously made for myself, and then I saw them, the endless string of charges for Chloe's trip. Hotels, flights, expensive meals, shopping sprees, each one a blatant disregard for my future. A cold fury settled over me, hardening my resolve. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about shattered promises, about the fundamental disrespect they had shown for my life, my dreams. My finger finally descended, clicking the freeze account option. A confirmation pop-up appeared, asking if I was sure. "Are you absolutely certain you wish to proceed?" it asked. My answer was an unhesitating, resounding yes. I typed in my password, a string of characters that now felt like a declaration of war. The screen refreshed, a small green checkmark appearing next to the words "account frozen." A strange calm washed over me, a chilling sense of satisfaction. It was done. The money was inaccessible, frozen in the digital ether. Chloe, somewhere over the Atlantic, was about to discover that her magic carpet had just turned into a very expensive, very grounded piece of metal. And my parents, believing themselves safe and sound, were about to receive a very rude awakening. The game had truly begun, and I, Chloe, was now holding all the cards. The silence in my room was deafening, yet within it, I could almost hear the distant echo of their impending panic. The trap was set. The notification landed like a lead weight in my palm. Transaction declined. It was a short, stark message, yet its implications were vast, echoing across the Atlantic. I imagined the scene, the chaos erupting in the check-in line, the sudden shift from carefree anticipation to utter bewilderment. The trap, so meticulously laid, had finally sprung. I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and a profound, chilling emptiness. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about the cold, hard reality of consequences. My phone rang, a frantic, unfamiliar number. I let it ring, watching the screen light up with a grim satisfaction. A text followed almost immediately. "Chloe, pick up! It's urgent! What's going on with the card?" It was my mother. Her usual composed tone was replaced by a desperate urgency that vibrated through the words on the screen. I typed back a single, deliberate sentence. "The card is frozen." You know why. I knew that would hit harder than any argument, any accusation. It threw the ball squarely back into their court, forcing them to confront the truth they had so carefully avoided. The next call came from my father, his voice strained, laced with a barely concealed panic. He launched into a tirade, demanding an explanation, threatening to call the bank to fix this. I remained silent, letting his words hang in the air, allowing the full weight of the situation to settle on him. When he finally paused, breathless, I spoke, my voice calm, almost detached. "Dad, that card was for my medical school fund. It was not for Chloe's European vacation." The silence on his end was deafening, a stark contrast to his earlier bluster. He tried to pivot, to rationalize, to explain it away as a temporary loan, a misunderstanding. I cut him off. $75,000 isn't a misunderstanding. It's a choice. And you chose her dreams over my future. He attempted to appeal to my sense of family, to the bonds we shared, the very things they had so carelessly trampled. "Chloe, we're family. We do things for each other. This is for your sister's happiness." His words rang hollow, stripped of their power by the blatant hypocrisy. "Happiness at my expense?" I countered, my voice rising slightly, the first crack in my calm facade. "You emptied my future for her adventure. How is that family, Dad? How is that love?" The conversation devolved into a painful, circular argument. He grew increasingly frustrated, his voice cracking with a mixture of anger and desperation. He revealed that they were stuck, unable to rebook flights, unable to access funds. The carefully constructed illusion of their perfect carefree trip was crumbling around them. He even hinted at Chloe's distress, her tears, hoping to weaponize my sister's emotions against me. But the image of my own years of sacrifice, of the medical textbooks and endless nights, hardened my resolve. I had shed enough tears for a lifetime. Then came the call from Chloe herself. Her voice was thin, reedy, utterly devastated. "Alex, what did you do? We're stranded. This was my dream my whole life." There was no anger in her voice, only profound hurt and confusion. It was the sound of a dream shattering, and for a fleeting moment, a pang of guilt pierced through me. This wasn't about hurting Chloe. Not really. It was about holding our parents accountable. But seeing her caught in the crossfire, A pawn in a game she didn't understand, was a bitter pill to swallow. I explained calmly, rationally, the history of the fund, the years of promises, the blatant disregard for my future. I laid out the facts, devoid of emotion, letting the sheer injustice of it speak for itself. She listened, her sobs subsiding into quiet sniffles. There was a long pause. Then, a whispered "oh." Just that, a single syllable, but it carried the weight of a dawning realization, a sudden understanding of the magnitude of our parents' deception. It was the sound of her own trust cracking, and in that moment, I knew the dynamic of our family had shifted irrevocably. The resolution was messy, as all true reckonings are. My parents, cornered and desperate, eventually called me back. This time their tone was different. The bluster was gone, replaced by a defeated resignation. They proposed a solution, a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. They would take out a loan, using their own savings as collateral, to cover Chloe's trip. And in return, they would sign over the deed to the rental property they owned, the one they'd always intended to sell eventually, directly to me. It wasn't the full $75,000, but it was a substantial down payment on my future, a tangible acknowledgement of their wrongdoing. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was an admission of guilt, a desperate plea for a way out. I considered it, weighing the immediate relief against the long-term implications. The property wasn't liquid cash, but it was an asset, something concrete they couldn't take away. It was a step towards rebuilding, not just my finances, but perhaps eventually a semblance of trust. I agreed on one condition: the paperwork had to be signed before the card was unfrozen. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The game was over and I had won, but the victory felt hollow, tinged with the bitter taste of shattered illusions and a family irrevocably fractured. The bitter taste of shattered illusions lingered, a constant companion even as I watched the paperwork being signed. My parents, their faces etched with a mixture of defeat and resentment, finally capitulated. The legal agreement, drafted by my attorney, was ironclad. It stipulated not only the full reimbursement of my trust fund, but also a significant penalty for the financial and emotional distress they had caused. The pen scratching across the paper sounded like a death knell for the family I once knew. My mother, usually so composed, avoided my gaze. My father, the stoic pillar of our household, looked like he had aged a decade in a single week. I had won, undeniably. The substantial sum, far exceeding what they had taken, would soon be back in my account, along with a hefty additional settlement. The path to medical school, once obscured by their betrayal, was now brilliantly clear. Yet, the victory felt hollow, a desolate landscape where a vibrant family portrait once hung. There was no triumphant surge of adrenaline, no satisfying sense of justice served, only a profound, aching emptiness. Chloe, the unwitting catalyst of this entire saga, remained oblivious to the true depth of the financial chasm her European dream had created. She knew her trip had been cut short, blamed it on a technical glitch with the card, a story my parents had hastily concocted. They protected her, even in their own downfall, from the ugly truth of their deception. Part of me wanted to expose it all, to tear down the facade, but another part, the one that still remembered, the innocent little sister who looked up to me, couldn't bear to inflict that pain. I decided, then and there, that Chloe would never know the full extent of their betrayal, nor the drastic measures I had taken. Her disappointment was enough. The days that followed were a blur of legalities and logistics. The funds transferred, the account settled. My financial independence was restored, but the emotional cost was immeasurable. Our family home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum of broken promises. Conversations were strained, punctuated by long, uncomfortable silences. The easy laughter, the shared stories, the comforting presence of a united front, all were gone, replaced by a fragile truce built on resentment and unspoken accusations. I began to distance myself, physically and emotionally. My focus shifted entirely to my studies, to the future I was meticulously rebuilding. Every textbook opened, every lecture attended, was a step away from the wreckage of my past. I immersed myself in the demanding world of medicine, finding solace in the precise logic of science, the tangible pursuit of healing. My friendships outside the family became my new anchors, a lifeline to a world where trust wasn't a commodity to be exploited. Months turned into a year. I rarely visited home. Phone calls were brief, superficial. Chloe, still pursuing her artistic endeavors, occasionally called, her voice bright with stories of local art shows and new inspirations. She would ask about medical school, genuinely interested, unaware of the storm she had unwittingly brewed. I answered vaguely, keeping the conversation light, protecting her from the harsh realities that had reshaped our lives. One day, an invitation arrived in the mail, Chloe's first solo art exhibition. My heart ached with a familiar pang of conflicting emotions. Pride for her achievement, sadness for the fractured family that wouldn't truly celebrate it together. I debated whether to go. The thought of facing my parents, of being in that strained atmosphere was daunting. But then I thought of Chloe, her innocent excitement, her genuine talent. She deserved my support, untainted by the bitterness that still simmered beneath the surface. I went. The gallery was bustling, filled with vibrant colors and the hum of appreciative murmurs. Chloe, beaming, greeted me with a hug that felt both familiar and distant. Her art was stunning, raw and expressive, capturing the essence of places she had only dreamed of seeing. My parents were there, standing awkwardly in a corner, observing the scene. Our eyes met across the room. There was no anger, no accusation, just a quiet understanding of the chasm that separated us. As I looked at Chloe, so full of life and unburdened by the secrets I carried, I realized the true nature of my victory. It wasn't about the money, or even the satisfaction of seeing them face consequences. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, about defining my worth beyond their expectations and manipulations. It was about choosing my own path, even if that path meant walking away from the ruins of a family I had once cherished. The closure wasn't a grand, dramatic confrontation, but a quiet, internal acceptance. I had protected my future, and in doing so, I had finally set myself free. The past would always be a part of me, a scar that reminded me of the lessons learned, but it no longer dictated my present or my future. I was Chloe, a future doctor, and I was finally whole. The silence that followed my pronouncement was deafening, broken only by the hum of the airplane engines and the muffled sounds of other passengers. My mother's face, usually a mask of carefully constructed composure, crumbled. My father, who had always seemed invincible, looked as if someone had just punched the air out of him. And Sarah, my little sister, the golden child, burst into tears, not the dramatic attention-seeking, kind, but genuine heart-wrenching sobs. The kind that rip through you. "Chloe, what have you done?" my mother finally whispered, her voice laced with a mixture of disbelief and utter devastation. "I've cut off the money," I stated, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Every cent. This trip, this dream vacation you've been planning with my money, is over. You have no funds, no credit, nothing." My father started to bluster, something about legal action, about how I couldn't do this to them. But I simply held up my phone, displaying the frozen account screen. "It's done, Dad. The bank confirmed it. Every card linked to that account is now useless. You have no access to anything." Sarah's sobs intensified. "But, Disney, my dream castle," she wailed, her innocent dreams shattered by the harsh reality of their deceit. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of guilt, seeing her genuine heartbreak. But then I remembered the years of neglect, the constant prioritizing of her over me, the casual dismissal of my own dreams, and the feeling vanished. This wasn't about Sarah. It was about the years of being invisible. My mother, recovering slightly, tried a different tactic. "Chloe, darling, please. We can talk about this. This is a misunderstanding. We'll pay you back every penny. Just unfreeze it. Think of the embarrassment. Think of what people will say. What people will say, I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You think I care what people say after you stole $75,000 from me? After you dismissed my entire future for a frivolous trip? After you made me feel like an ATM, not a daughter? My voice rose, attracting the attention of flight attendants and curious passengers. I didn't care. The years of suppressed anger, of resentment were finally boiling over. This isn't a misunderstanding, Mom. This is theft. This is betrayal. You didn't just take my money. You took my trust, my sense of security, and any shred of hope I had that you actually cared about me as an individual, not just a resource. The flight attendant, a kind-faced woman, approached cautiously. Is everything all right here, ma'am? My mother, ever the master of appearances, quickly composed herself. Just a family disagreement, dear. Nothing to worry about. I met the flight attendant's gaze. Actually, no. My parents have committed fraud, and I've just cut off their access to the funds they stole from me. They are now stranded without means to continue their trip. The attendant's eyes widened, then she discreetly moved away, likely to inform the captain. The tension in our row was palpable, my parents trapped, humiliated, and exposed. Sarah still crying, bewildered by the sudden collapse of her perfect world. The rest of the flight was a living nightmare for them. They tried to reason with me, to plead, to manipulate, but I remained steadfast. My resolve, honed by years of being overlooked, was unbreakable. When we landed, the scene at the gate was exactly as I had envisioned. Airline personnel, informed by the flight crew, were waiting. My parents, unable to pay for anything, were ushered aside, their bags held by the airline until arrangements could be made. I walked past them, my head held high, a strange mix of triumph and emptiness swirling within me. Sarah ran after me, her tear-streaked face pleading. Chloe, please don't leave us. I stopped, turning to face her. Sarah, I'm sorry your dream trip is ruined. But this isn't my fault. This is the consequence of Mom and Dad's choices. They put a price tag on my future, and they chose your vacation over it. You deserve to know that. Leaving them there, stranded and facing the consequences of their actions, was the hardest thing I had ever done. It wasn't a triumphant walk into the sunset. It was a walk into an uncertain future, burdened by the realization that the family I had always yearned for was irrevocably broken. The revenge was sweet, yes, but it came at a profound cost. My financial independence was secured, but my emotional landscape was a wasteland. I had gained control, but I had lost the illusion of a loving family. The closure I found was bittersweet, a quiet understanding that sometimes justice means dismantling everything you once held dear.